The number of entities related to Set or Seth is astonishing. It is a pervasive name. It is a pervasive construct. You see it throughout various cultures. This is a very ancient entity, a very ancient construct. And you see this name, this entity infused throughout a number of spiritual traditions. What you also see when looking closely is that a number of deities have Set inside of them, or they serve as a cover for Set or Seth. And Yahweh is no exception. It's noteworthy that Yahweh is also another word for Jehovah or Hova. What we're going to do now is look at a number of other names that are related to Yahweh that are subsequently related to Set. These are stand-ins for Set. These are just other names for Set or Seth. Now we're going to start off with this very cursory review of this name Yehudi. Yehudi is another name for Yahweh, by the way. This is odd because Yehudi is an Egyptian entity. And Yahweh, although identified as a Canaanite entity, this entity is most promoted in what would be considered Semitic traditions, Hebrew traditions specifically. And so this is the deity that's identified throughout the Old Testament. You will often hear individuals indicate that Yahweh is a deity that was created by Esau. However, when we look at the transliteration of Yahweh, what we find is that Yahweh is more closely akin to Isaac and Jacob than to Esau. So let's look at some of these names so that we can see these relationships and how these relationships form with these letter conservations in these transliterations. And so what you have is Tahuti with this silent D. And then, of course, this interchangeable D. D can be interchanged with T. And then we also have this Y and J interchange. And so when you finish dealing with the interchanges, you see very clearly what's really going on here. And so at first, you see Tahuti spelled in a variety of ways. And then when you consider the transliterations and the swapping out of the J for the Y, you see what's really going on with respect to a specific Hebrew name. And so this Hebrew name is Yehudi or Yehuti. And this is simply a transliteration of Tehuti, which is again this Egyptian entity. And here you can see the swap outs more clearly. We are reducing the letters so that you can see what is conserved when it's all over and why these are all the same names. And so here you have these letters that are missing some other letters, but you still see what is being conserved. And so with that DJ dynamic, the J has now been removed. And you can see more closely how that T and D interchange. You can also see more clearly how the J and Y doesn't interchange. You can see the interchange with the I and the Y. What is consistent is this Ihu dynamic with respect to this name. So you see this across transliterations. But those other letters are interchangeable. And so it's all the same name, essentially. It's all Tehuti. It's Yehudi. It's all the same word. We're going to look at a little bit more of the conservation so that you can see even more closely what's going on here with these transliterations. Now, all we've done here is remove the consonants that were at the very beginning, those D's and T's and Y's and J's. And here you have Yehudi. You see Yehudi with the TY, the TI, and the DI. Now, this is when it gets really interesting. Now we go back to visit the name Yahweh. And what we find in the translations is an interesting dynamic. And so when you look at the phonetic spellings of Yahweh, you come away with a number of names in terms of these phonetic spellings. And this isn't unusual. We've seen this over and over. What is unusual, however, are the names. Okay. So what you see is Yahweh appears over 6,000 times in the Old Testament. That's with that Yahweh. And so you have 6,218 times with that specific spelling. But then there are additional entries for this name in this construct. One is pronounced Horus. Why is this odd? That's yet another Egyptian entity. And that particular entity is also related to Set, but in a very interesting way. Now, what we also have when you look down at additional entries is that there is an entity that apparently has been deified, because this name, when you look at the transliterations and you look at the translations, this name is very closely connected in terms of space. When you look at the hard copy Strongs, you see that it's right next to it. Okay. So right next to Jehovah, Yahweh is Yehuda. Yes, Yehuda. Do you know what Yehuda is? You can stick a J where that Y is, and it'll help you to see it more clearly. So you have Jehuda. Basically, this is Judah. You also see Yehudi, Yehudim, Yehudit, and then again that Ha and Horus. And so essentially, Judah or Yehudi is a translation or transliteration of Yahweh, Jehovah, Yehovah, and Hova. And not only do all of these names relate to Yehudi or manifest as a translation or transliteration of Yehudi, all of these names also are associated with the name Set.